Where has been your safe place, your sanctuary? I have found several over the course of my life, and I'm grateful that each time I needed some safety, a sanctuary was available. The first safe place I remember was in the branches of an enormous live oak tree back near the fence line of the 5 acres on which I grew up. Like many southern live oaks, this tree had branches near enough to the ground that it was easy to climb. I would make my way up onto one of the broad limbs with my ever-present library book and read until my siblings came with invitations to do something together, or my parents called with time for chores. One day I had just settled into that same branch when I happened to look over and saw a coiled snake a few feet away. Needless to say, I quickly climbed down from that tree and did not go back. My sanctuary, the sense of comfort and safety that place in the live oak provided me, was not a feeling I would be able to recapture now that I knew a snake could show up there. So it was time for a new sanctuary. As fate would have it, I soon became the proud owner of a horse, and for the next period of time, that horse was my sanctuary. Her physical presence and the affection I felt for her and from her, providing the kind of deep sense of home that a sanctuary gives us. Where have you found sanctuary? A safe place, a safe person, a safe set of circumstances that allowed you to lay down your burdens and rest, safe and secure from all alarm. For we need sanctuaries in our lives. We need to know that being busy and alert and well-behaved and on guard and dutiful, all those aspects of ordinary human existence that require us to stay focused and working and vigilant, that the necessary and difficult reality of being human in a world that is often mean and dangerous is not the way we always have to live. We need times of real rest, real safety, places of shelter, people we can trust to keep watch for us, so for a while we don't have to keep watch. And how blessed we are when we find those sanctuaries. As I've listened to some of you describe your own spiritual journey, you often talk of Unitarian Universalism in general, and this church in particular, as having provided a sanctuary, a place of resting and safety that you needed. A place of resting, where you could be comforted, supported, spiritually renewed, a place where the demands of all the rest of your life are suspended for a time, and a place of safety, where the criticism and disappointment you may have found when you asked difficult questions or challenged traditional beliefs or found yourself condemned for how you lived or who you loved would no longer be the way in which you would be greeted. And what a gift that this place, this community, has been here when you needed it. Announcements, a mailing, and testimonies are all noting that today is the beginning of our annual stewardship drive, when we ask you to make a financial commitment to support this congregation for another year. Your monetary pledge acknowledges that this sanctuary in which we are gathered this morning, this sanctuary that is this congregation, is a sanctuary you cherish and want to be sure that it remains. For being able to continue as a vital sanctuary is absolutely dependent on having the financial resources we need to be the church we intend to be. And now, more than ever, this church is needed. We are seeing a challenge to a host of assumptions we carried about our future, about our country, about the values of our culture, about the subjects we could and could not talk about and teach in our schools, about gains in equality and places where inequality remains, about the sort of world our children will inherit. While all those matters are never tightly nailed down and never as much in our control as we want to believe, still, the degree to which the nails are coming loose and uncertainty and fear are being introduced into our lives is intensifying daily, which means that our need for a sanctuary is greater than it used to be, maybe greater than we have ever seen before. Your Generous Life team is using as the phrase for the pledge campaign, the year of giving generously. That is both a description of what the year has been so far and what the year needs to be going forward if this church is to thrive. Your generosity has already resulted in the beautification of this place, in a greater energy and participation in the work of this place. Yet decisions are lined up to come before you that will test your commitment to one another and to this sanctuary, this community you're part of here. You'll need to search your hearts and your spirits to listen deeply to one another and to examine carefully what your church means to you and how you translate that meaning into your presence and engagement here. I've seen in my few months with you how very much you love this congregation. I've seen how kindly you care for one another. But that love and caring cannot be taken for granted, cannot be assumed that, of course, it will always be there. The annual pledge drive is a time when each of us answers the question once more, the question of what this community means to me, and then how I translate that answer into a financial commitment for the coming year. Now, more than ever, all of us here, along with many outside our walls, need a sanctuary, a true spiritual home. Because before this week is out, someone, perhaps the person nearest you, perhaps you, will need this church and the people here for comfort in a time of grief. Before this week is out, someone, perhaps the person nearest you, perhaps you, will need this community and the people here for reassurance in a time of fear. Before this week is out, someone, perhaps the person nearest you, perhaps you, will need this sanctuary and the people here to remind you of your best self. Before this week is out, someone, perhaps the person nearest you, perhaps you, will need this church and the people here to share some wonderful news, to rejoice in a great triumph. Before this week is out, someone, perhaps the person nearest you, perhaps you, will need this community and the people here to join together to accomplish some work of justice that could never be done alone. And before this week is out, someone not here, someone not known to us, someone outside our walls, will need this congregation and all of us in it to speak for them, to stand with them, to shelter them, to let them know that hope and help are still possible, however deep the darkness. We need this place. We need this congregation now more than ever. Our neighbors need this church now more than ever. So may we not fail to cherish this community, to give generously to sustain and grow it, and to stay grounded in love today and through the year to come. Amen.